French will go to the polls in April and May this year to elect a new president. However, a dramatic 7-point surge by the wildcard left-wing veteran Jean-Luc Mélenchon appears to be holding, unexpectedly turning France's roller coaster presidential race into a possible four-way contest. Why has such a dramatic situation arisen in this French election? Are any black swan events also likely to occur here? As the voting process goes on, the world is also watching to see how far the populist wave has traveled in France and beyond. Since the outcome would shape both France and the EU, and will have an immense bearing on the matrix of European relationships into which Britain's Brexit is now beginning to feel its way. How will the result influence the EU? EU-US disagreements in trade, political and security issues remain unresolved. What kinds of challenges will future EU-US ties face? Is Trump's splitting view accelerating Europe away from the previously stable US-European relations? Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently stated that China is full of confidence in the future development of China-France relations and supports the process of European integration. However, will China-France relations be affected by the incoming new French president? Will the EU choose to draw closer to China in trade and political relations?
The French presidential election 2017 has been one of the most unpredictable and dramatic presidential campaigns in French political history. With less than a week to go before polling day, the outcome remains too close to call. After the surprise results of Britain's Brexit referendum and the election of Donald Trump as US president, just what kind of a politician and politics France chooses will be of huge interest to many, not just those inside Europe. To analyze the French election and predict the possible implications for EU and beyond, today I'm very happy to be joined in the studio by press correspondent for French newspaper Dernière Nouvelle d'Alsace, Eric Mayer, and author and columnist Anna Tangen. We shall also speak to director of EU Asia Center, Fraser Cameron, via telephone. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. Gentlemen, who will be the most promising presidential hopeful among the four?
The most promising to me seems to be Mr. Macron, because his program is extremely clean and elaborated, logical. It has been saluted by analysts as the most complete and the most elaborated economic and political program. So for that reason, also Macron, who is only 39 years old, doesn't have any black past. He is not corrupt. We have not known of any stories of that kind, so it seems to be
we understand your bias in favor of this guy. However, he is only 39 years and doesn't have enough political experience in the office. He was a Minister of Economic Affairs and a banker for a while, but do you think he will persuade the swing votes to win the second round?
Well, there's some controversy. First off, he was finance minister for 16 months under Hollande. He did change some minor things, but there was not a major working. There's some concerns that he can do smaller things. The question is, can he do the larger ones? There's also this issue about kind of a softness. What happens when disaffected people in France, will they turn the same way that they turned out in Brexit and under Donald Trump? I mean, the polling going into both of those events showed a massive, that there was going to be quite different things. So, you know, there are a lot of questions here. You can see Marine Le Pen doing many of the same things that Donald Trump did, kind of these odd tweets and announcements which seem to do more with establishing an emotional connection with the dispossessed and disenfranchised, or the ones who see themselves as disenfranchised within France.
Eric, your initial and immediate response to my first question gave us a strong feeling that it seems the majority of the French voters are likely to walk the central road, to be central instead of turning to the far right or the far left. What is the momentum of the present-day French politics? Are they tired of Monsieur Hollande's socialist economic policies, or they would rather usher in an era of change and change itself, period?
The situation that we live in is unprecedented. You have 11 candidates, that's quite normal, out of which 4 are gathering each more or less like 20%. That's 80% for 4 candidates. We are in the margin of error that's so tight that we can't say for sure who is going to
You mean you are likely
emerge.
to have a runoff between the two arch-rivals?
Yeah, but what is the most interesting problem about that is that all classical parties are imploding, and they have lost the faith or the confidence of the people. That is incredible. You have 4 candidates, front runners. Out of these 4 candidates, 3 are outside of any classical big large parties. So we don't have one possible black swan, we have 3 out of 4. Who is going to win, and what force is going to emerge? Will it be the force of let's say, to stay in the center and resist the dream of extremism, either left-wing or far-right? We don't know yet, but for sure people are disillusioned and angry, and that changes the whole prospect, the whole picture of France.
Yes, indeed, in this closest race in our living memory, it seems we'll just look at the issue of witch hunting instead of addressing serious issues. Let me go to a third party who is supposed to be assuming a central role in observing the elections in France. Let's go to Fraser Cameron, our regular commentator of current affairs, but he's now standing by in the United States. He's going to talk to us on the phone. Hello, Fraser. What do you think are the most interesting issues that appeal to your mind instead of your heart?
Well, I think that there is, as was the case with the Trump campaign in the United States, a big difference between what candidates are saying to win votes in France and what will actually happen when they are in power, whether it's someone like Le Pen or anyone else. The reality of being in office means that your choices are limited. So I think it's really important to remember that. And remember, of course, when François Mitterrand won the first time, he had a very left-wing campaign, and when he was in office after 1 year, he had to change course because both the European Union and the international market said you cannot do that. So your actual room for maneuver is pretty limited.
Leader of the far-right movement, Marine Le Pen, vowed or taken aback the whole of Europe by vowing to put a ban on legal immigration, and that has shocked those who are optimistic about the future of the European Union. Now, Le Pen has indeed won her share in the market by talking about anti-immigration issues. What will be the most likely outlook for the European Union once this far-right movement leader took the upper hand in the dogfight?
Well, she certainly would accentuate the immigration question at the European level, but it already is one of the top issues, and the European Union has reacted to immigration by erecting controls, physical controls, along the Balkans, the deal with Turkey, for example. So it's simply not a big issue in terms of the huge numbers now. There's still a problem with the Mediterranean, but I think that will also be under control as well. So the numbers are dropping. It's still an emotional issue, but it's not the top priority that it was, in fact, about 18 months ago when the European Union was receiving literally thousands and thousands of refugees almost every day.
Thank you very much, Fraser Cameron. We'll go back to you in a few minutes. Welcome back. Eric, France seems to be in the counter-terror campaign following the tsunami of asylum seekers triggered by a 7-year-old boy washed ashore in the on the Italian beach. The emotional picture led to a decision by Angela Merkel to take thousands of refugees. And now terrorist attacks, lone wolf attacks did take place in your country, and therefore Marine Le Pen vowed to take a second look at the free borders between and among the Schengen member states. Do you think that will be a horror? Do you think that will be holding back the clock and lead to the disintegration of the European Union?
I doubt it. No, I don't think it will happen. You must first think of why are the French people, a majority of French people, or a strong minority, are against immigration. You have 35% of French people who are in the middle income trap, or they have low jobs, they don't earn enough. A lot of new poors as well in France. And these people are very angry because they feel that all parties have abandoned them. That is why our parties are now shaped and out of fashion.
And what's the population of Muslims in your country?
3 million.
3 million. And what's the percentage of Muslims in your total population?
The population is about 70 million, 68. So maybe 5%.
Only 5%.
Yeah.
But the population growth is very impressive. And do you think this will be a big issue for not only France, but also other big members of the European Union?
Well, first off, when you start talking about terrorism in Europe, you have to the fact that it's not the asylum seekers who are creating it. The danger is actually from the second generation, kids who grow up in foreign countries, often very poor circumstances, segregated from the rest of society, who become easy prey because they're disillusioned. They don't feel part of France or the country they're in, whether it's Germany, France, wherever, and they don't feel part of the country that they came from. In their search for identity, they often become easy prey for these terrorist organizations. So it's very important to differentiate what the problem is. Having said that, everybody, I think, in Europe has about reached their fill, and there is going to be change. The Baltic states and everything like that have said quite clearly that they favor some sort of restrictions on people coming out. It would be the only way to save the Schengen.
Sorry, these young people who are candidates for terrorism, they are also, you are right to say, second generation, but what happens is that they are looking for their roots. They sort of symbolically ask their parents, "Daddy, what did you do during the war?" Meaning, what have you done with my country of origin? Where is our culture? Why do you want to integrate? We are different. We want to show this difference. That's why they become easy prey.
No, the reason they become easy prey is because if you go out into the suburbs of Paris, you'll see vast areas where there are impoverished people, segregated, basically in almost concentration camp-like experience. These are not places. The police do not like to go into these areas. These are places where you have a tremendous amount of crime. Often it's by the same group of people on themselves and their neighbors, but it is an easy place for them to do it. And France,
Eric, do you think
France has failed?
Do you think these people have? Do you think these people that Anna Tangen pinpointed could be compared to the losers in the Rust Belt? Those guys in the Rust Belt in the United States turned out to be the die-hard supporters of Donald Trump. So these losers on the city proper of Paris are likely to support the candidate that opposes
definitely.
They definitely won't.
It is a Rust Belt, definitely. And a lot of these young people, they control part of the cities of the banlieue, outside of Paris, outside of Lyon. The police don't get in anymore, and if they try, they will be attacked, stoned, attacked with stone and so on. And there is a very lucrative traffic on drugs there because there is no law. You can do what you want. This has changed since the attack in Paris at this at this cabaret in Paris, and also after the Nice story. Since then, the whole of France is under sort of martial law. And then the army is entitled to walk into these cities where there was no more law. So the things are changing right now. But basically all candidates are applying or are advocating more policemen, more gendarmes, and more cells in prisons. For example, Macron is saying 10,000 more cops and 15,000 more in prisons to receive 15,000 people.
Thank you so much. You are watching Dialogue with Eric and Anna. We're also talking to Fraser. We're discussing the French election and whether it will be a French revolution in terms of the impact upon the future of the European Union. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. We haven't addressed seriously the candidacy of Mélenchon, the far-left movement. What does he stand for?
Mélenchon is for a pension at 30 years old, is for minimum wage or minimum income for everybody. He is also very much in favor of how do you say, green energies, wind or solar energy, and against the nukes, against nuclear energy. The success of Mélenchon is partly due to the fact that he's a wonderful speaker. He's fiery, he's funny, he cracks jokes all the time, and French people love that. So he's quite a dangerous man because his program is quite extremist.
He's the Bernie Sanders of France.
Yeah.
Therefore, he appeals to the young electorate very much.
He's had a 7-point bounce. He's definitely had the momentum going in his favor. But at the end of the day, there can only be one person to stand against Marie Le Pen. Probably it's going to be Macron, because he still has the lead. I think it was 23.5% as of this morning. 2 polls, the other one put him at 25%. So it'll be a question of whether he can maintain his momentum as we go through the next few weeks.
The horror show would be if at the second round you have Le Pen against Mélenchon, extreme right against extreme left. Then the whole of France would lose out. For example, none of these people have any experience on international politics. They have never been in China, for one. They don't know much about Germany. They are focusing on policies within the national border.
Are you suggesting clearly that they are the winners of populism? The populists are the majority tyranny. They don't argue with people reasonably.
Definitely, populism has played a very big role during this campaign. Absolutely so, unfortunately, and it is we can fear that if populism wins, then France will try to get out from the European Union, and then what will happen with the European Union?
They not only want to leave the European Union, but also to adopt a warmer relationship with Russia. And do you think this will embarrass the other side across the Atlantic Ocean, Anna?
Well, I don't know that France has really cared too much what the United States thinks on a number of issues on that end. But one of the things that's kind of looming over this is whether or not Marie Le Pen is actually using the same apparatus, Cambridge Analytics, the specialist that uses large data sets to create profiles of people and then reconnect these candidates, not on sensible issues, but on emotional ones. And you'll notice that she's following exactly the same pattern as Donald Trump. She keeps lashing out on these populist issues that kind of tug at the heartstrings. She talks about jobs, about putting French people first, about the dangers of people from outside, whether they're legal or illegal immigrants. These are the types of things that Donald Trump used. Everyone laughed at him. I laughed at him. But he is now President of the United States. So there's always a danger. And if, as you said, it was a socialist versus her, it is very difficult to say who would win.
Let me go to Fraser Cameron for his comments on the roller coaster presidential election in France. Hello, Fraser.
Hi.
What do you think of the current sentiment, the prevalent sentiment in France against the establishment, and what does that mean for the future of the European Union?
Well, I think my own view is that the high tide of populism has passed. I think that the real danger was in the Netherlands, and we saw that Prime Minister Rutte was re-elected, Wilders basically lost, and I think it's going to be very difficult for Marine Le Pen to win. I think I agree very much with the previous speaker. She's using exactly the same strategy as Trump did, very much the same strategy as the Brexiteers did, playing to emotions with very simple slogans, make America great again or take back control. So these certainly resonate, but I don't think really that she will win, and I think there is really no danger to the European project as such. The European Union has stabilized. I think that Merkel will certainly be re-elected in September, and that the European Union, after going through a very difficult period, will be a relaunch.
Fraser, is it true that whoever wins the roller coaster French presidential election, given the momentum in the simmering debates about immigration, the European Union will be the loser? And the solidarity of the European Union will be seriously undermined by the brutal fact that the traditional Franco-German axis will be seriously undermined as a result of the rise of populism in continental Europe?
Well, the European Union has been undermined by the conspicuous lack of solidarity in dealing with the immigration question. I mean, so many immigrants went to just two countries, Germany and Sweden, and very few others really took part of the burden. So that is certainly a problem. But I think you're right. I mean, the Franco-German motor has also been affected, but equally, Berlin and Paris know that they are bound together. They are the real drivers of the European project. And regardless of who is in power in Paris and Berlin, these two simply have to get on. And that's why I'm pretty confident that after we have the elections in France and Germany, that these two countries will be the prime movers of the relaunch of the European project.
What's your prediction for the prospects of having continental Europe drifting away from the United States? Because President Trump said on the campaign trail that he stood for a splitting in the European Union. Did that mean that he would love to see a punished and diminished European Union?
Well, he flip-flopped on that as he slipped up on so many other things. He's made some encouraging statements about Europe now, both to Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, as well as to Merkel when she was in town, and Vice President Pence has made similar noises. So there's been a change in approach in the administration. I think it's more that America is drifting away from Europe than vice versa. I mean, it's America who's setting out on a protectionist trade policy in opposition to the European Union. It's America who's basically not so enthusiastic now about climate change compared to the European Union. It's America who's drifting away from the whole multilateral approach compared to the European Union. So I think the real question is, why is America drifting away, not the European Union drifting away?
Well, pretty wise to say the other way around. Thank you so much for being with us, Fraser Cameron. Eric, what about François Fillon, the guy who is currently under investigation on charges of jobs of his family members? Is that true? And do you think he's likely to align himself with the other forces to win the majority in the final round?
First of all, I'd like to come back on one point made by Fraser Cameron, saying that the French-German alliance is going to hold whatever. This will be true only if either Fillon or Macron wins. If the two extremes win, then there will be a super big crisis and a blank page in the future about the friendship and the cooperation with Germany, which I absolutely hope to see preserved. Now on Mr. Fillon, he was so low and he has defended himself miserably against the accusations which were put against him. He had a very bad defense, denying in the denial and so on. But in the end, he goes up again. Why? First of all, because France always had sort of tolerance for corruption. It's not a crime to be corrupt in France, I'm afraid to say, but our political tradition is along that.
But I'm afraid the standards of corruption is very different between France and China in people's name.
Oh, yeah, certainly, certainly. Another point is that François Fillon defended himself. I mean, he resisted, he showed resilience, and he's still there. And the last and strongest point is that the whole of France is afraid, is scared by the prospect of having an extremist as a president. So a lot of people are saying, I prefer to have a half corrupt president who is in the middle than an extremist that I don't know.
Okay, Eric, we Chinese actually don't care so much about who will win the candidacy itself. It is an issue for European politics, but by the end of the day, most of the Chinese would ask much the same question as to will that affect the China policy? China has been pushed to the driver's seat, and we presumably would assume the leadership during the absence of American after the campaign there. Do you think continental Europe or Britain are ready to accept the so-called Chinese leadership in the post-US era, post-order, post-West, post-truth?
Yeah. China is definitely taking its seat as a world power, and no one is going to stop that. This is a fact of the future, a fact of the present. Now, if Fillon or Macron wins, it will be very easy for China to continue developing the relationship. If we are with the extremists, for example, Le Pen is going to try to make politics within the border and don't talk to China. She's trying to repatriate the jobs and to have a protectionist policy which will not be in favor of China, but she will also be very isolated in Europe. Europe itself may implode if we have because both of them, Le Pen and Mélenchon, they are in favor of leaving Europe.
Okay. Yeah, Ray, I think it would be a major mistake for people to be blasé about whether or not one of these extremists gets in. Because quite frankly, if that were to happen and there was a break with the EU, this would have a massive impact on China's relations economically and politically.
Definitely.
And consider also that a win by somebody like Le Pen would embolden Donald Trump even further. So what you would have is another major leader of a major country economic force gathering into this area of saying, look, we don't want to have dealings with anybody. It's us first against everyone else. China is for a multilateral, open transactions and trade. These people are not. So yes, you should not be get involved.
In fact,
you should be concerned.
In fact, we don't expect the European Union to quickly give us the economic, market economic status. But merci beaucoup for joining us, Monsieur Mayor and Mr. Anatolian. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue on the French election, not the French Revolution. See you next time. Goodbye.